Hello and welcome everyone. This is Harshal Desai from Elit's Technomedia Private Limited and Ego Magazine. Welcome you all to an exclusive conversation with PSU thought leaders called Cloud Economics in PSUs. This is an exclusive roundtable that we are organizing today on our wonderful virtual platform called Avatar. And we are very glad to inform our audience that we have been able to get a great support from eminent leaders from leading PSUs from the country. I'd like to take a minute to introduce all our panelists today on this wonderful forum. We have been joined here by Mr. Abhishek Agarwal. He is Chief General Manager and Head IT, Energy Efficient Services Limited. We have also been joined by Mr. Rahul Tandon, Head Digital Transformation Project Anubhav, Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited. Mr. Manish Malik, IT Head, Indian Oil Corporation Limited Marketing Division, has also graced this occasion. We welcome global mobility and highway expert from India, Mr. Akhilesh Srivastava, to this forum. Mr. A.M. Rao, Group GM, System and Personnel, Central Warehousing Corporation, and Mr. Gautam Kumar, Chief Technology Officer, IntelliSmart Infrastructure Private Limited. We also welcome founder, CEO, and editor-in-chief, Elit's Technomedia Private Limited, Dr. Ravi Gupta, to this panel. Cloud economics is one of the very crucial and important subject, and today we are going to have a discussion on the same. As I mentioned earlier, we will have a brief presentation of eight minutes from uh, Ms. Rishu Sharma. She is Principal Analyst, Cloud and Artificial Intelligence. And the subject of this presentation by Rishu Sharma is Industry Perspective on Hybrid Cloud Application on Hybrid Cloud, VMware Cloud on AWS. After this presentation, we will have the panel discussion. I request my backend team to run the presentation, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rishu Sharma, and I lead the cloud and AI research for IDC India. First and foremost, I'd like to thank all of you all to be able to take out time to join us here today. I hope you and your loved ones are doing good and staying safe. On my slides today, I'll talk about the cloud market in India, talking about the pandemic impact and how applications are driving the deployment choices. I'll also talk about how hybrid multi-cloud is becoming the norm and what does this mean for the enterprises. Now, the rapid wave of digital innovation is sweeping the business's world today, and it is making it imperative for the CXOs to realign their objectives and consolidate resources to reinvent their organizations to be able to keep up with the multiplied innovation. Now, multiplied innovation represents the next chapter of digital transformation journey, and the new imperative is to keep pace with the unprecedented rate of business change, with increasing speed of business operations, the speed at which the changes are delivered, and the speed and scale of innovation. Now, the forces of multiplied innovations are powering up, and we are seeing an explosion in digital innovation platforms and ecosystem to facilitate this transformation. Now, there's a multifaceted process that involves overhauling IT around a distributed cloud infrastructure, public cloud software stacks, agile and cloud-native application development, to be able to have a digital resilient enterprise that will, build and deploy infrastructure that supports the digital goals of the businesses and help them compete better in this new digital ecosystem. And all of this will have cloud as a backbone, because virtually none of the third platform technologies or innovation accelerators are possible in a scale-up implementation phase without having cloud as a basis. Now, none of this conversation would be possible, or rather complete, till we talk about what happened in 2020 and the impact thereof. Now, COVID-19 has had a significant impact on cloud adoption and spending. And most enterprise customers say that cloud spending exceeded their planned budgets in 2020, with over 60% of the organizations stating that they exceeded their original budgets by 5 to 15% in 2020. Then, of course, there were other reasons, cited by the organizations in terms of access to, new technology, new workloads, compliance, and others. Now, having said that, the pandemic still continues to be the key driver of cloud adoption as enterprises continue their investment in cloud infrastructure, platforms, and software to improve the resiliency of the business operations and equip themselves to tackle the successive waves of pandemic. As business objectives aim at gaining resiliency, IDC expects that cloud adoption will be further accelerated for rapid digital innovation. Now, if we look at how the deployment choices are being driven today, now while selecting the right path of a specific workload is heavily dependent on the nature of the workload and the internal skill sets and the overall cloud migration journey for the organization, we're also seeing that most organizations are choosing a mix of private and public sources as well as the traditional systems based on the value of the application or the workload that is actually created for the business. And eventually organization will make the platform choices based on two key metrics, which is the business value and the business priority. From a technological standpoint of view, the key consideration for end user organization when it comes to making informed choices between running workloads on private, public cloud, or traditional architectures will depend on various factors, including application performance, agility, trust, cost optimization, and resiliency. But every organization will need to make informed choices of retaining some of the workloads on the traditional architectures while also modernizing and migrating a larger mix to private and public cloud. Now, to understand this a bit better, we asked the Indian organization as to where their cloud spending will be focused towards in 2021. Now, private cloud, cloud security, and software as a service spending will lead the increase in spending over the next 12 months, but only slightly ahead of the other areas. Overall, the total cloud spending by organizations in the country is expected to increase by 22% in 2021. Large organizations are posting more increase in spending compared to the smaller organizations. Now, cost pressure and service disruptions are the top impact of the pandemic, but cloud-related IT budget is set to increase over the next 12 months. Now, we also asked the organizations that if they think about all of their, applications that they currently have, where is it that they are actually deployed today versus in coming times? And I'll start by looking at how, the organizations are leveraging cloud now. Of course, public cloud usage is continuing to grow, but private cloud too is growing at quite a remarkable rate. And this parallels the increased complexity and compliance requirements of the workloads that are being migrated to cloud environments. And also the fact that the cost equation for a public versus private is now less of a differentiator. We still have quite a lot of non-cloud environments, and I believe we will still have non-cloud environments for a few years to come. So they should not be neglected as they are as exposed as new applications, sometimes more so because of the reduced maintenance funding. They will be integrated with the increasing number and scale of private clouds and accelerating use of public clouds. So they must be as trusted as any other workload. Now, the key point to consider here is that the shift is not about going to private or public, but the shift to off-premises. The proportion of third-party hosted workloads is continuing to increase and be sourced out, from outside the organization and in different locations that operate from varying jurisdictions. So in all of this, the aspect that becomes most critical is that of cloud management for amongst other things, including reliability, resiliency. And this covers a wide range of disciplines, not the least of which is security. So to take home the message, now cloud to edge cloud architectures are driven by workload characteristics and will mandate all-inclusive adoption patterns. For some workloads, the focus is shifting from public cloud efficiencies and cost savings to private cloud speed, performance, and security. Now, application churn, particularly for non-cloud on-premises applications, favor containerized legacy applications on private clouds. And all of this points out to the core finding that it will be a mix of private and public clouds that will become critical for the organization. So for the businesses as they progress forward, hybrid multi-cloud will become critical. Now that offers the opportunity to utilize the best of breed cloud solution and better risk management, which are considered to deliver better value for the organization. In today's business and economic environment, the need for businesses is to undertake digital transformation to stay relevant to the changing markets while building the competitive edge. Evidently, digital transformation is not an easy task and has several elements in flux. Therefore, in order to facilitate the digital transformation, the underlying IT environment has to be flexible and agile, yet resilient, secure, and compliant. And all these facets are found as base tenets for hybrid cloud. Now, majority of the enterprises in the country plan to operate in a hybrid or a multi-cloud environment and require workloads and data interoperability between the different clouds. Enterprises are increasingly adopting a hybrid cloud infrastructure as it combines the best of both worlds of private as well as public clouds. Not only that, this offers the opportunity to utilize the best of breed cloud solution, better risk management, and is regarded as providing higher return on investments than single cloud deployment. Organizations who are at latter and more mature stages of cloud adoption and have had broad implementation of production applications on the cloud will gain more values from multi-cloud deployment, and eventually hybrid multi-cloud will become the de facto gold standard for IT architecture for seamless integration of all clouds and non-cloud infrastructure. But all of this is not bed of roses. There are challenges in hybrid cloud spanning across, building effective orchestration, service management, and self-service capabilities, so that the CXOs can achieve the role of service brokers and truly build an IT as a service model. Now, this challenge will make its presence felt as large enterprises expect their computing requirements to be built on a mix of public cloud services, private cloud, as well as the traditional environments. Now, they also expect that this mix to change dramatically depending on the development of new applications and the evolution of mature mission critical systems of record. We also asked the organizations on what their operational challenges were from the multi-cloud strategy. And as you can see on these slide listed, these were some of the challenges called out by the Indian organization. Now, without optimal tools, a multi-cloud can become a silos of infrastructure with minimum interoperability and visibility. A fragmented multi-cloud suffers from data gravity that restricts applications to a silo where the data is located. And this negatively impacts the management, the security, migration, DevOps, OPACs, as well as the optimal placement of the workloads. Now, with that, I come to the last slide, and I just wanted to leave you with the core message. Now, hybrid cloud is the de facto gold standard for IT architecture, which is a seamless integration of all clouds and sometimes even non-cloud infrastructure. Hybrid cloud helps organization in creating an infra-agnostic IT environment and involves a modernization of applications using containers, microservices, APIs, open source, so on and so forth. All of this means that more and more businesses will have to think about the readiness of technology, which is about thinking like factors like standardization, integration, interoperability, hybrid cloud nativeness, to name a few. Thinking about the readiness of the processes, which is all about automation and orchestration, billing and cost control, self-service, testing, reliability, to name a few. And of course, the readiness of the people, which is all about, the skills, the center of excellence, program management, business alignment, and so on and so forth. So as organizations progress forward, it would be about taking stock of the applications and developing a modernization roadmap for each one of them. Taking action, think about the center of excellence that can actually focus on all stakeholders and create governance models and identify the right partner, an ideal partner that can actually support the organization in this journey, ensuring the optimized environments will become critical. Now, with that, I come to the end, and I hope you found the slides insightful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Rishu, for that wonderful presentation. And once again, I welcome all the panelists. Now, without a further delay, we would like to seek opinion from all these experts who have assembled today and agreed to share their views and expertise on this platform. And I go first to Mr. Abhishek Agrawal, Chief General Manager and Head IT, Energy Efficiency Services Limited. Mr. Agrawal, you have spearheaded large-scale transformation programs in topmost automobile, telecom, logistics, travel, and defense organizations. How do you see the digital transformation taking shape in various power organizations?
Yeah, good afternoon all. Yeah, the thing is that now it is, this is my personal views, whatever I am presenting right now, it is really important that energy companies realize the promise of digital innovation at scale on a global basis, basically. Because why it is better to us? It matters to world as well as to the energy companies. Because that is what, if you read the newspapers and all the literatures, within 2-3 decades, the energy demand will going to be soon hit very high. And how to support the people in that case. For the developing world, we need to seek, they will seek path out of the poverty and all. We need to reduce the poverty in the case. And this cannot be done without the power of the digital. to improve efficiency and manage the complexity of this thing. And because of the energy companies, we are having they are facing unprecedented changes, because you see there are lots of market competition is coming, complexities are coming. You see the grids are totally now computerized. So there is less predictability now. What is the power consumption? What will be the power consumption in the next 1 day or 2 days? Nobody knows. So these are profit margin also coming into the pressure. So I believe that digital innovation will be the few means that can contain these profile changes. And by using this predictive analysis, if we are able to use it in the future, then we will be able to use the digital transformation in the proper sense in this case.
Right.
And I believe, like if you see these papers have been published and some companies have worked on the small projects. I'm not saying they have done the POC or something like that, but they have worked on the small projects. And out of that, they were able to save once they have implemented the digital into their plant or their grids, they're able to reduce the power cost out of that. So approximately 2 to 10%, they were able to reduce the cost.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That is how I think energy companies they are right to take this. They have to take digital seriously. Right. Now the old things are gone.
Yes. To keep a pace with the changing demand and technology, the companies are, of course, inclined towards this technology. Let's move to oil and gas. We have two experts from the sector today joining us here, and we are very glad. I'll first go to Mr. Rahul Tandon, Head Digital Transformation Project, Anubhav Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited. Sir, welcome and thank you so much for joining. My first question to you, Rahulji, is since you have been driving the digital strategy for BPCL, what is your views on the adoption of cloud in oil and gas sector, sir?
Thanks, Harshal, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you for inviting BPCL on this panel. We're happy to share our views. Harshal, as you asked, what is my view on the adoption of cloud in oil and gas sector? Let me tell you, I mean, oil and gas companies have been early adopters of various technologies and systems like DCS, SCADA, plant automation, etc. Even from the days when cloud did not exist or even was unheard of. It has always been hosted in-house, and you will find every oil and gas company housing a large data center along with another disaster recovery center in some different seismic zone. Now, these centers also have been mostly set up and managed by in-house teams. While cloud slowly started becoming popular and the host of services offered increased exponentially, there has always been a concern of security in adopting cloud, particularly in the oil and gas. It was difficult to, kind of fathom how to manage and control infrastructure, which I cannot see, I can never visit, and often don't even know the exact address where it is set up. So, and additionally, since oil and gas industry has an element of national security, willingness to explore alternatives to physical in-house data center was limited. But over the last few years, with more adoption of cloud across the world and this coming in as a mainstream utility service, the fear has reduced, and now there is more willingness to explore and adopt the cloud. Given this, adopting cloud is often more complex than anticipated. Since we come with a background of managing physical data centers, the first thing people adopt in cloud is infrastructure as a service. General tendency is to replicate existing physical data center processes on cloud, which may not be right, and we feel that it is not right. The benefits here are just restricted to maximum to scaling of infra. But after certain initial inhibitions and explorations, people do start exploring PaaS as a service. And this is where the true value of cloud starts getting unlocked. Yes. There's another element to adoption, which is of commercial in nature. Traditionally, data centers were CapEx heavy with limited revenue expenditure, and oil and gas companies have never shied away from huge CapEx investments. But cloud is purely a revenue expenditure item which hits the bottom line, the balance sheet directly. That's where an adoption challenge kind of comes in. These are initial roadblocks, but after due diligence, at least at Bharat Petroleum, we have analyzed that the total cost of operating of cloud is more favorable, and that's why we have adopted cloud on a full scale in our digital transformation. Yes. Thank you, Harshal. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Rahulji. Mr. Manish Malik, IT Head, Indian Oil Corporation Limited, from Marketing Division. Sir, what are your views, and considering your vast experience in building, implementing, and the large DC, what is your view on hybrid cloud approach? You're mute, sir. Manish sir, you're mute. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Harshal, and good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, just to make a contrast, if I look 2 decades back, there used to be only the batch processing systems, the payroll kind of systems. So there was no business disruption. Okay, and it was a very monotonous kind of environment. And we were very happy to host the application and the databases in some fixed number of servers, and the infra augmentation was a very uniform line of thought. Okay, but now the times have changed, as Mr. Rahul was telling. The industry 4.0 is not yet rolled out, but we are looking at industry 5.0 also. Okay, business demand is suddenly it's going up and down, and COVID and lockdowns have further aggravated it. Okay, we don't know when the lockdown is going to happen and when there will be just zero kind of demand in the market. Okay, so as the businesses expand their business footprint, okay, and they become more decentralized, and we are faced with the challenges of providing remote services to the remote employees, partners. Okay, they want access at any place, at any time. A single data center can't support all these global requirements due to the decentralization of operations. So these challenges can be addressed by a hybrid kind of IT strategy, where we have the traditional data centers. Maybe we can use it as a private cloud and along with the public cloud. Okay, so hybrid cloud as such, I feel it enables the organization to invest the bare minimum in their data centers to take care of the basic business needs, and then they can avail the public cloud services for their additional business requirements. So, as for me, I think this hybrid model is a kind of win-win proposition for all type of organizations. Yes. It facilitates the service kind of model. Okay, as Mr. Rahul was telling, the platform as a service is the best model which you can go for it. And in fact, I should tell you, in IOCL, I was in Ratnagiri refinery just 1 year back, and I joined IOCL just 9 months back. So we have taken quite a good number of initiatives on the cloud perspective. You know, Indian Oil is a network of 30,000 retail outlets, and we are getting data on the real-time basis to our central place in marketing head office. So it's a complete data ingestion platform and the analytics. So we are adopting a platform as a service model. In fact, I did the POC on 2 major service cloud providers. And other than that, we are on VMware. I have used the VM. On the VM also, we have done the POC so that we can seamlessly migrate to the cloud. So we are going to adopt the cloud native components, okay, through the PaaS model, whether it is the data ingestion, whether it is your analytics, your third-party integration tools. So all those things will come, and all of our existing business your web services, okay, they will be modernized. They have to be rewritten. Okay, so this is a big project, and very soon we'll be floating a tender. So yes, we are going to adopt the hybrid cloud in the way that one more project parallelly we are working on, that whatever our production workloads are in our data center, we are forming a roadmap out of these workloads based on the data classification. Okay, how many workloads can be straight away taken to the public cloud, and we are going to host these applications in a co-location kind of model. And you know, all these are hyperscalers as on date. Okay, so we can avail the public cloud services through the co-location data center also. Okay, so this will purely, it will be a hybrid kind of model in which I will be hosting my data in the co-location, which will be on my WAN network, and I will be availing the public cloud model.
Right.
Apart from that, if I go into the OT part, you know, Edge to cloud data summarization, it is also, it best fits into the hybrid kind of architecture. Okay, whenever we are capturing the data from the sensors and storing them in an on-premise server, and then we are exposing it to the public cloud for getting the analytics kind of services. One thing that sensitive data we can think of, we have to be ensured that we should host the sensitive data in our private cloud, okay, or the on-premise data centers. So for that, we have to go for the very good data classification project kind of thing in our organization. And I think the future is very unpredictable. So hybrid cloud to me is a very effective way to align our IT priorities and the business needs. So that's all from my side.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Malik. We will, of course, hear your views on data security also. But before that, let's move to global mobility and highway expert, Mr. Akhilesh Srivastava, the man behind FASTag, which is one of the very successful program of Government of India, NHAI. Sir, you have been part of a number of IT operations in various government organizations and public sector undertakings. So what is your take on government and government departments' willingness to adopt cloud technologies in various operations?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Harshal, and very good afternoon to participants and my co-panelists. Yes, you rightly said, how is the government going to take it? What is the government thinking about it? Let me tell you one very clearly. The government, as on now, this government is doing. I mean, it's a totally IT savvy. You see the e-governance infrastructure, how fast it is expanding. It's not behind any corporate or even private sector. At places, at least I can say about NHAI, it's way ahead of the normal corporate because we have implemented a data lake, which is a platform as a service. Part of it is even advanced software as a service, and this data lake is storing plenty of data. So I will come to that later. But coming to the core question, how government is prepared, how government is going to adopt. Government is absolutely committed to it. They are, I mean, a lot of cloud-based government services are very active, very much being used by the government organization, the government officials. To name a few, FASTag, you already said. I will be also talking about it subsequently. But the most important, the cloud-based service which all the government offices are using now is the e-office. It is a cloud-based service hosted on Meghraj, NIC Cloud. All the government officers who writes on the file, everybody is now using e-office. And this lockdown period has been, I mean, you can say it has transformed the working in other sectors, including the government as well. So the push which was required to make e-office a successful venture has been given, provided by, unfortunately, by this digital push through the COVID or the lockdown. So now people are fearful of touching the file during the pandemic period in the peak time. So everybody was comfortable sitting at their home and just logging to the e-office cloud and clearing the files. Now that has become the default rule in a government organization. Another very good cloud example is the e-tender portal, which is again more than 5 lakh government tenders, PSUs tenders are hosted on the e-tender portal, CPPP we call it. GEM, that's another cloud-based. So the government is extensively utilizing these cloud services and to reach to the citizens or the rural areas or the remote areas. These are proving to be very facilitating the people in remote areas and real time. You can access the things. For example, just I will take a few seconds more to explain about the data lake of NHAI. Ashal, when last year 2020 lockdown, when majority of the construction companies or the infrastructure things were closed, NHAI broke its own record of 25 years by constructing highest number of national highways in a year. So in 2021, we constructed 4,600 kilometers of highways. We awarded 5,000 kilometers of highways. I mean, approximately. These are the examples how cloud services or cloud-based services are improving the operational efficiency. Today, all our staff, project directors, the contractor, consultant, everybody is logged into a platform called that, which is running on the top of a data lake. and people are posting their requirements, the approvals, extension of time, and decisions are tracked by the team, and that's the improving the efficiency.
Yes.
So that's going to further transform. Is going to make the things another more user friendly and citizen friendly.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Mr. Akhilesh. All these initiatives actually help you to make NHI first digital government company to go digital fully. I'll go to Mr. A.M. Rao, Group GM System and Personnel, Central Warehousing Corporation. Thank you so much for joining, sir. Question to you is: public cloud offer crucial capability, but also create additional security risks. What are your comments on this?
First of all, good afternoon to all of you, and thanks for giving opportunity to Central Warehousing Corporation and HR also, additional responsibility. So it is a good mix of role where I can control not only the people, but policies also.
I think
available in public cloud. The security is continuous improvement process. I cannot say, or nobody can say that no organization is completely secure. It is a continuous process whereby one has to take best practices, adopt ISO 27001, and go for regular audit from third party and implement all the countermeasures which are observed during the third party audit. So this is the one aspect where you can plug whatever security holes you have in your infrastructure as well as in your software. So both we have to look infrastructure and software. Both security audits are mandatory. Every year one should go for the security audit. And even if there are any major changes in infrastructure or software, one should go for audit before the things are going for the go live or for the production. The other aspect of the going ahead with the public cloud or hybrid cloud is that some of the organization, to save the cost, they go with the limited services of the security component. So what I recommend to all the government user and for the corporates to avail all the security component which are relevant and required, not only from the compliances point of view, but from the process point of view also. Some of the services could be, one should go for the, firewall is by default it comes. Then one should go with the, identity management, syslog, encryption devices, SSL now it is must, data leak prevention for the remote users and for the servers also it is required. Access control in the application should be role based, and most of the applications now provide it. Some of the applications required usage of two-factor or three-factor authentication. In my previous organization, even I have used RSA token. We used to have, application running across jewelry shop across pan India. We used to give the RSA token because it seems to be one of the better way of handling the two-factor authentication. It is a hardware-based device. Now, nowadays, most of the e-commerce companies are going with the OTP type of authentication. Again, it is, it can be, spoofed also. So one has to be very, very particular about the OTP through the SMS-based system. Regular audit of the processes, which is deployed in UTM or firewall or IPS, should be done. What happened, I have observed in many government department and corporates, the firewall and IPS and application firewall, they are deployed in default mode. They are not optimized or they are not reviewed regularly. So, this creates, this is just a default system, which will not give any value to the organization. See, all the policies should be based on the threat which is available, uh, uh, whether the system is required on a critical basis, online operations are going on, whether the financial transactions are being carried out through the system. All this needs to be, ascertained, and then only we should deploy the policy. Also, we should look into the user profile also. Some of the user profile should have some level of policy, and some other users should have, other level of policies. Other, what I have, seen, I am part of security in many organization. Now threats are also coming through the HTTPS traffic. So this is very, very dangerous. One can, offload this HTTPS, packets. It can be analyzed, and the malware from it can be deleted. But again, this will create latency in the system,
Right.
which may not be, accepted by many of the functional users.
Yes.
And by the client also. Also, if you go through the RFC, it is some request for comment. It is against the compliance for the RFC also. So, there is no, clear system evolved how to, deal about the threats.
Yeah, and it's
emanating from the HTTPS traffic.
It's a continuous process.
Yes, it is a continuous process. So, to take care of it, one should go for the business continuity, DR side,
right,
hot DR, and all that. One should avoid keeping data and services in house also, because a lot of threats are coming from in house also. Earlier,
Mr. A.M. Rao's screen is.
One should. We should not depend on the.
Mr. A.M. Rao, there is some network problem at your end, I believe, but I'll once again come to you with my next question. Now I'll go to Mr. Gautam Kumar, Chief Technology Officer, IntelliSmart Infrastructure Private Limited, and would like to ask Mr. Kumar, sir, considering the modern application landscape, and diverse geographies, how will the cloud add value to the transformation?
Systems are in place.
Mr. M. Rao, I'll come to you with the next question. I'm asking Mr. Gautam Kumar, CTO IntelliSmart, how will the cloud add value to your digital transformation story, sir?
So when we look into the way we are implementing the smart meters and the smart grids, when we talk of millions of devices when you are getting into the grids now, and that's the last mile of the grid, which is the consumers basically. And the way the grids are changing at the last mile, distributions are changing. And the more and more natural resources are coming in, as we were talking in the initial discussions. And the grids have become very difficult to predict, right? The demands are difficult to predict in way the natural resources are coming in. At the same time, more and more devices are getting embedded. So digitalization of the grid earlier, that was not the way to. And I can say last so many years when we look into the power sector, typically on the distribution side, there is not much digitalization which has happened. And the first attempt has happened 10, 12 years back with the shape of RAP-DRP, where large in-premise data centers have been established in all the DISCOMs. It was not a great success, but certainly it has given the foundation, right, for starting about the digitalization journey in a way, and in bits and pieces. This has started. Soon, the smart meters, the advent of the smart meters happened, and mini meters. So when we started in 2017, we started with the cloud, right? Because we know the way the meter, the smart meter data is coming. So basically, when we look into the smart meter side, there's operational technology, and same time the IT side, the new applications which are coming, which are microservices based, and the devices are more when they are pushing the data all the time, and you have to design some systems which are related with the queues, data queues, huge data queues are there. So MQTT and other different new technologies are being used. So we started with cloud, different clouds. At this moment, we are having serving out around our cloud environment. What we created is for around 10 million meters, right? Okay. And they are running in a way. One of the reasons of why we started with the cloud, because even if you look into the criticality of the infrastructure, so most of them are in private cloud. That's why I'm very sure that we are not doing anything because of the criticality of the infrastructure. So everything in the private cloud and the GCC environment, the MATI clouds are there. So those security and other parts which have tried to build right from the design. Right? So it's in so security has to be in the systems to be from the design level. So it's not an afterthought anyway. So the keys and whatever cryptography has to be used because it is connected with the distributed system across the individual devices. So that is one part. But slowly we have found one part is that being a federated structure of distribution companies, that we cannot manage everything centrally. So we started up looking that these projects are getting delayed because to create the infrastructure for the sort. We come up with an idea of creating a containerized solution for the AMI infrastructure for across the country for different distribution companies to use it on an OpEx model. So we are creating one enterprise platform on the cloud, which is based on a part it's a mix of hybrid as well as a mix of, I can say, hybrid cloud and the hyperscalers. So some part are on the hyperscaler like data lakes, the event-based smocks, basically, where you are getting the events because a lot of events are generated. There are many events happening in the field from the devices, power failures, outages, swings, swags, whatever is happening. So those events are coming and that's going into a central warehouse. I can say a data lake that is through an event bus. And the rest is coming into like wherever we are fetching the revenue data or the demand load or any data which is coming from a prosumer, basically. When they are consuming also, they are generating also rooftops and distributed generation. They are being taken over the private cloud.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. I'll come to you with my next question also. Before I'll go to Mr. Abhishek Agrawal. Is it true, Mr. Agrawal, that cloud customers often cannot effectively identify and quantify their cloud assets or visualize the cloud environments? What is your views on this? You're mute, sir.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, basically, if you see, the thing is that no, the technologies are there now, the tools are also available where we are able to clearly find out how much CPU I am utilizing or how much memory I am utilizing or what is the hard disk size, everything. So I don't buy this argument where people are telling I am not able to see because we are coming from a generation, like at my generation, like if you see people who are at this level, CIO, CTO or CGM at this level, we are having approximately 20 years of experience, 15 to 20 years. We are from that stage where cloud started. It's just a buzzword what people have given. As per my understanding, I have used the cloud in 2005 also, or in 1990 also when I was in defense, I was using this cloud because I was giving this center server was there and I was charging to the army people for getting how much CPU you are utilizing and I can charge to you. I was having like you can say, at that time I was having 512 CPUs running in a server and then GBs of memory in a server. And I was charging from different commands, this much money you need to transfer to me, something like that. Although we are not charging. The same concept we have implemented in Maruti. We have implemented a large dealer management system. And in the large dealer management system, we have told this many cars you are selling. So this much load is going to be created on my servers. And the memory and all, everything is going to utilize my network bandwidth. And I am going to charge 100 rupees per car from you. And maybe you can charge from the customer or you. So this concept is going on. So we are coming from that age. So people think we are much more comfortable that server has to be available in front of our eyes. But now the scenario is changed. Everything is like, I can see if you see the SD-WAN or I can go to the VMware, say VMware people are there. And I have also used VMware, hyperscaler, everything. If I go there, I can see what is the utilization of the thing. So it is just a perception-based feeling. Yes. Like everything is available on software now. There is nothing you can see. Right. Everything is available.
Thank you, sir. Interesting. Thank you so much, Mr. Abhishek Agrawal. My next question to Mr. Rahul Tandon. I request sir to please switch on the camera. Rahul ji. Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
My camera is on. Yeah.
Yes. So, sir, question to you is that hybrid cloud architecture is becoming a norm in the enterprise world. Now, what is your take on this, and how do you see hybrid cloud adoption in PSUs in our country, Mr. Rahul Tandon?
Yeah, so one thing 2020 has taught us is to expect the unexpected. And whilst we do not know what 21 or 22 has in store, several trends have emerged that enable us to make some predictions for what this year might hold for world of hybrid cloud. So new technology was acquired in more ways than ever last year, with a number of changes, growing hybrid cloud use emerging, including AI automation aiding the shift to hybrid cloud environments, the pushing of more workloads onto intelligent devices through leveraging hybrid cloud, integrity of many cloud and on-prem systems into single hybrid platform, and widespread adoption and experimentation of new security technologies with increased cybersecurity risks. So, and the challenge of enabling employees to work remotely has definitely forced the industries to go the hybrid way. Reliability, control, and performance are the top motivators for using private cloud, while scalability, agility, and cost effectiveness, I say, are the key for public cloud. So considering compliance and regulatory risks, a hybrid cloud is a great option for public sector undertakings. It provides better security and control of data and a cost-effective way to scale up, and it saves capital investment in creating IT infrastructure. So those are my 2 cents, Harshal.
Right. One quick question to you again, Rahulji. Having already on multi-cloud journey in BPCL, how do you have an integrated view on to manage and monitor multiple clouds?
Yeah, so the cloud service providers do provide portals and dashboards where we can have complex 360 complete 360 view of all cloud resources, be it networking solutions, storage, security, monitoring to CPU and memory utilization. Even to that level, you have the portals and dashboards giving you details. We can scale up or scale down based on payloads requirement. Just optimally use these cloud services. Keeping a pace with the offerings from various CSPs through, though is a challenging, but yes, more or less having automated monitoring solutions make this manageable. Right. We did have a migration experience from one cloud to another, which was a seamless one. Of course, it was backed by strong terms and conditions laid down, which did help us during the migration. Also, our contracts with CSPs are structured to ensure business continuity. We do have a real-time monitoring mechanism in place for monitoring various cloud services. So this is how, we have been kind of not only managing the integrated view, but even managing and monitoring multiple clouds on our various platforms.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Rahul Tandon. Now to Mr. Manish Malik, IT Head at Indian Oil Corporation Marketing Division. So we were discussing about the data security, and the question to you, Mr. Malik, is to defend sensitive plants and data from cyber threats. It's also a very crucial thing. So what strategies do you suggest protecting cloud data, application, and infrastructure from these threats? You're mute, sir. Malik sir, you're mute. Yeah.
Yes. Harshal, we see security on the public cloud. It's always a big concern to the organizations which are who are stepping into the cloud. Increased attack surface. You are not defining the roles and the access control in a very tight way. Then your lack of visibility, it can create nightmares for any organization. And added to that, the compliance to different governments, regulatory and the industry standards it can also put pressure to the organization. So we have to be careful on few strategic points. I should say, when you are going to adopt the public cloud, the security, it should be nearer to the cloud. Okay, we should go for the zero trust network security control. You logically segregate the business domains, business applications, and as I said earlier, also you have to go for the in a very precise manner the data classification from the security perspective. Then yes, maybe native cloud features may not be adequate, so we have to evaluate our security needs, and if required, so we have to put the additional security components to enhance the control.
Yes.
Yes, we have to define a very robust policy-based identity and access management system. Okay, it should not be loosely defined, and we have to work on the role-based access. And encryption is also very crucial, whether the data at the rest or the data in the motion, okay, across the different layers, we need to implement it. And you know, dynamics of the workloads in the cloud make it very difficult for us to compliance. Okay, so the compliance checks, I feel that they should need to be done on the real-time basis, as and when you are going to change some workload, some production workload. So any kind of violation or the misconfiguration, it needs to be automatically alerted. Okay, the procedure should be implemented so that it can create the auto alerts and you should be able to take the corrective actions. Okay, so this is what I feel from the security perspective when you are going to adopt the cloud journey.
Right. We also would like to seek your view quickly, Mr. Manish Maliki. What should be the right networking strategies to integrate DC to the public cloud?
See, now the cloud is the integral part of IT infrastructure. Okay, there is an increasing focus on the network. Okay, network is your connecting various components of your ecosystem, whether it is your on-prem cloud, whether it is your private cloud, your co-location facilities. Okay, so enterprise need network which allows them to seamlessly share application workloads across the various IT environments. Okay, as I said, the on-premise data center, co-location, public cloud.
Yes.
For what I feel, for integrating enterprise services hosted in the on-premise data center, we should take care that the WAN network has to be secured and not to be exposed to the public cloud. Right. Okay, like we are taking up this project, our retail ecosystem onto the public cloud. So we are taking utmost care when we are architecting the network for it. Okay, so what we are planning, it has to be a dedicated virtual public cloud with a scalable layer of security, like your next generation firewall, your IPS, your WAF. Okay, and you should reach this virtual public cloud through, again, an independent and the redundant dedicated network. That is the on-premise network. So it means between the public cloud and my on-premise data center, like I'm sitting in Bombay, my my data center facility is in Gurugram. So between the cloud and my data center, I have to host a dedicated virtual public cloud, MPLS cloud. Okay, that will take care of my networking needs. It means that my data from the on-premise data center cannot reach directly to the cloud. It has to go through a very secured layer, as I told, firewall, IPS, web, everything. Okay, and then it will reach onto the cloud. Okay, so yes, for the SaaS application, if I should say, like the Office 365 we have implemented, where the users need to access O365. Right now, the present system is that we have a single and central gateway, which is in the headquarters. Okay, the total traffic comes onto the single gateway. Okay, so now we have to plan for the internet breakout at the local level. Okay, so of course we are planning the SD-WAN based networks, which can sit on the top of the existing MPLS network, and they can be centrally managed. Okay, to brought in the better user experience, and we can offload the much of the bandwidth at my location level, at my state office level. And apart from that, if I talk of my
keynote speaker.
Please, you to, please.
If I talk of my retail network, as I said, we are a big network of more than 30,000 retail outlets. So we are planning to create a separate, integrated and the independent network for my retail outlets through SD-WAN. So already we have floated the tender. So this will again take care of the network needs. My all retail outlet will be on SD-WAN and it will be centrally managed. Okay, it has nothing to do with the main IOCL network. Okay, so these are the things I think we should take care, because ultimately we are going onto the cloud. I have to send my data. The data will be, data streaming would happen, data analytics would happen. So it has to come through a very secure network layer of the organization.
Yes. Rightly said, Mr. Malik. Thank you so much for sharing these views. Now I go to Mr. Akhilesh Srivastava. Sir, we all know the success of FASTag, and we are very keen to understand, how cloud played its role in this successful program, and how significant it was.
Really fantastic question, Arshal. Actually, if I say a lot of credit goes to cloud computing, so it's not a metaphor. Actually, it's a lot of credit goes to cloud computing system. Had it been a few years back, probably could not have been so successful. You see the number of transactions done on a toll plaza in a country, all around the country, through FASTag are roughly 6 to 6.5 million transactions every day. So with 65 lakh transactions a day, you're collecting something around 100 to 105 crore rupees every day as a toll collection. It's a mammoth system. So many transactions, so many people parallelly using it at more than 750 toll plaza across the country. And the FASTag users are also mammoth. They have crossed now 3.5 crore. So this is one of the biggest toll management system anywhere in the world. And it's a totally cloud based because the moment transaction plays, it hits to that string is sent to a cloud. The processing, the issuer, acquirer, banks, both are taking the inputs through cloud. It pings them, sends them back. The transaction is done in microseconds, again through cloud only. We slightly tweaked it with the hybrid kind of model, because there is a central cloud at the MPCI level, which manages the switching and the transaction string. But parallelly at the more than 750 toll plaza across the country, there is a distributed model. There it gets refreshed at every now 3 minutes. But for 3 minutes, the data is in the local server, and the transactions, the boom barrier opening, closing takes place from that. Because if we make it again on the cloud, that opening of the boom barrier, probably it will be inconvenient to the many users because of network connectivity issue or any issue, that barrier will not open in spite of money. So what we did, we adopted a hybrid kind of model. So their local data says which opens the boom barrier, if money is there or it's not, and it is almost now within less than 3 minutes get refreshed. And at many plaza it's almost real time, near real time, few seconds only it takes. So that's the model. And the settlement, the conveying message to the FASTag users, that's the completely that even cloud based, where processing, the analytics is also done on the cloud on the real time itself. So the cloud plays a very big role into this implementation of FASTag.
Yes. And one quick question would like to add here, Mr. Srivastava. How cloud adoption, help you save on cost? And in general, if I ask how cloud adoption can empower citizen and government workforce economically?
Absolutely, it is going to be, because see, if I say the data lake which we just implemented in HAI last few months back, this has led to a reduction in our firstly, it has increased the decision making capacity. operational efficiency has gone up by some analytics we did is approximately 18%. And when we are taking faster decisions, we are reducing the cost overruns and all. So I will not comment on how much saving actually it has done, but from the wastage point of view, which was the overruns used to be there in highway sector, that has been reduced by approximately 20%. So the decisions are there. We are communicating it fast, making faster roads. The projects which used to take more time to get completed are now completing ahead of the schedule. That itself is saving a lot of money, and which is approximately 18%, which we did analysis just very recently.
Right, right. Great, sir. Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Akhilesh Srivastava. Mr. A.M. Rao, I would like to understand you. You spoke about the how clouds offer crucial capabilities and also the security aspect of it. What are the latest IT initiatives you are now undertaking at CWC, sir? If I can ask you, please.
Okay. Okay. So, I joined this organization in year 2012. Before that, I was part of 4 more PSUs and government organization, and started my career as a lecturer in engineering college. So joining this corporation, there was no IT infrastructure, no software was in place. Word and Excel people used to work. I was the only person in the IT division. So I thought, let us, leverage this particular position. This is a green field. I started with cloud simply. In 2014 itself, I moved all my application to cloud. One by one, we have developed the application. As of now, we have 45 e-tools, which includes the ERP, which includes the warehouse management system, which includes the paperless e-office, which NHI has deployed over the cloud. We are using various clouds, right from Railtel, Microsoft, AWS, Control-S, number of clouds. We are multi-cloud operations. And our strategy was to, have SI in place who can bring all the component, including the cloud, and a tight SLA, which is monitored through, again, the cloud tool. So, it is per application, there is a separate cloud, and we are managing through the various dashboard and portal, the performance and security aspect of the cloud. Now, with these all tools are in place, my next level of automation would be to go with data quality governing index. So now, as of now, out of 5 score, I am 4.5, and my target is to reach score 5. And this particular project is monitored by PMO also. Regularly, PMO is monitoring this project. So data quality index improvement in the score is one of my project. Other projects are, various deployment of various IT tools, which are already there, and I am improving it. I am also going with ISO 27001. Probably this month, I'll be acquiring the certificate also. I am having number of IT applications. My 89% of the complete operations are on IT tools only. My complete file has been digitized. You will not find a single paper in my office. All the employees have been given digital signatures. All the employees, whether, grade A to grade D, have been given computer, laptop, and internet connection. Now my next level of automation is to go. I'm already, today I have floated the tender on GEM for robot process automation, AI. I am going in a big way. IoT, I will be deploying in my warehouses to sense the moisture and the temperature in order to control the food loss. I am part of, food security of Government of India. And roughly around 35,000 crore is lost toward the food. So I am going for implementation of IoT based control of food losses. These are some of the initiative.
Right. That is in fact interesting thing. I mean, if at central warehouses we can use technology to protect the crop or the food. That's something. These initiatives actually we need in our country. To make the most of this technology. Thank you, Mr. Emra, for this. And now to Mr. Gautam Kumar. IT is an enabler, and cloud computing can certainly make government focus more on its core business and strategy. So, what is your take on this, Mr. Gautam Kumar?
So certainly the cloud, the way when we look into, from my perspective, when I look in the way on the IoT and the smart metering part, so we do not have choice, right? It's a normal to us, and no other way than to get on the cloud only, because there are few reasons for that. One is the risk of obsolescence, and another is the institutional capacity with the end clients. Typically, we don't have institutional capacity to manage large size in critical infrastructures, which can go for 10 to 15 years, have a longevity. So that's one of the reasons of getting into the cloud. And that's where we see that typically for the smart metering or the smart grid, and the whole basic design is based on the cloud. And the way it is moving in, I think right from the beginning, because this is at a nascent stage, so whatever we have built in, we do not have much legacy there. So what we are doing is a greenfield to us and adopting the best what is possible and available to us. And in the same way, the government is also supporting it out. There are many cloud infrastructures which are available. And I can say when we go on the compliances, right? That's on the OT side, the compliances are very different than the compliances from the IT and the application side. So that's where a critical part comes in when we look into the IT side of the compliances on the security and the data retention and other part. So the way that we get the data, the use data actually. If you look into from a 10 million meters, I would be getting data points of almost 150 billion data points in a year. So you can understand how much is the data which would be creating from 250 million meters when all the meters will get changed to the smart meter. Besides that, there are many devices which will come in, not only those distribution management devices, the grid devices. So there are many sensors would be there in the system. So managing this data, certainly we don't have a choice than to get into the some new and disruptive ideas, right, and then look into the way it is evolving out. And that's the same way we are evolving in the same.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Gautam Kumar. Thank you so much, everyone. It was a pleasure interacting with you all. I want to take a 1 minute closing remark from everyone on these cloud technologies, and especially a remark on how these can save us in, help us in cost optimization. So I'll start with Mr. Abhishek Agrawal. Sir, your closing remark and how cloud can help Indian PSUs in saving the cost. Mr. Abhishek Agrawal.
I will not say it is a saving the cost. Maybe it is a equivalent the cost, but the basic thing is that as a PSU, we are having an IT team to support the business or to run the business. We are enabler to the business, and apart from the executor. So for enabling the business, we should be more focused on the business.
Right.
And we should not focus on the IT strategy, what is going on. Now we don't want to do in the research mode. So it's better we'll go the part what we are performing in the cloud. The team is putting lots of effort in the cloud, maintaining the cloud, running the operations, etc. This effort should be partnered with some other partner, like cloud partners are there. The CSPs are there. They will provide us the support, and we will put our efforts in the running the business. Right. That is what my take on that.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Abhishek Agrawal. I'll request Mr. Rahul Tandon to share his closing remark.
Yeah, so the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has intensified difficulties for the oil and gas industry. Major markets have seen increased volatility since March 2020, with oil prices suffering particularly badly. The strain on industry profitability has been augmented by the pandemic, and the associated oil price crash is impacting the bottom lines, in a big way. So long-term trends such as technology maturation and updated infrastructure are slowly eroding the supremacy of oil and gas. So in this environment, efficiency and optimization can really help oil and gas companies by allowing them to eke out profits from the same raw material for a little longer. So investing wisely by adopting technologies which will boost organizations' capability to increase efficiency, manage the demand of handling big data with analytical tools to help fast decision making is the demand of time.
Right.
So I'm confident we've made a good beginning with adopting cloud, where time is the essence to delivering quick and quality solutions. It looks very exciting and challenging, but as you know, some of the major IT research and advisory firms have predicted, cloud is here to stay, and now hybrid cloud is the way to go. Yeah. So there has to be a balance which we have to strike and tread this line a little cautiously. I'm sure profitability is waiting around the corner. Right. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Cloud is here to stay, and with other technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, it will only evolve in the future. And now I would request Mr. Manish Malik for the closing remark. Mr. Malik, may I request
yes.
you?
Yeah. See, from the oil and gas industry perspective, the way alternate energy domains are getting established and being adopted, like electric vehicles, your solar energy and the wind energy, your compressed biogas, the battery swapping and the battery charging, your non-fuel cells, your increased penetration of LPG into the households. So as an IT leader, we have to be proactive in formulating the digital strategy. Okay. The increased user expectation and management thrust on the analytics, on the your real-time updates, the retail network planning, your B2B pricing tools, it is all driving us to adopt the hybrid kind of cloud environment. Yes. Already I've spoken on how we are going to adopt the hybrid cloud. Okay. And yes, one thing more, because of this pandemic, we are in the process of establishing a complete digital platform for the paperless approvals. Already it is in shape in the marketing division. All the approvals are electronic, but yes, we are extending to the whole organization. Okay. And yes, from the OT perspective, I should say in our LPG plants and in our terminals, we are focusing on the operational efficiency and we are getting data from the sensors. Okay. And we are doing some kind of analysis and generating insights. So, and giving it to the top management so that they can take the better decisions. So I should say that the hybrid cloud is the need of the day to keep ourselves ready to give solutions in view of the increased user expectations on the your analytics and the chatbots, AI ML models. Okay. And at the same time, what I feel at the core of the heart that we should outsource our routine and the monotonous IT tasks, okay, IT administration tasks to the best possible extent. So that we should free our IT resources from doing the mundane tasks and we should engage them in more productive in exploring and implementing new technologies.
Right. Thank you, Manish ji. Thank you so much. Akhilesh Srivastava ji, sir, your closing remark, and how do you think AI and ML is going to further strengthen or support cloud computing technologies in future?
Yeah, see, predicting a future is a risky thing, but we can always draw some analogy based on the trends and the usages. So with this, I can say the future is very bright for the cloud computing. More so, the amount of data we are generating and more users of IoT devices almost everywhere. The quantum of data is going to be so humongous that there is no other alternate but to have a cloud. Internet getting cheaper, AI and ML tools are now getting more and more readily available. It can optimize the shape. Not only this, it's going to save the cost because your softwares are going to be very modular. That time has gone when you create a software and it becomes generic. The software using the artificial intelligence or the machine learning technologies, you can optimize, create a very specific software. Particularly is a modular software. So these things are going to be the key now in the future. And of course, as everybody said, hybrid, I consider not exactly hybrid is going to be edge computing with vis-a-vis your cloud, connected cloud. That's going to be the next future.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Akhilesh Srivastava. Mr. A.M. Rao, closing comments from you, sir.
I have heard all the panelists They are eminent in their own field. Most of them are from the public sector, government sector. All the government or PSU organizations, they have two type of operation. One is backend operation, which is HR, payroll, finance, purchase, all that. Other is business operations. For me, it is warehousing operation. For oil industry, there may be, other type of marketing and all operations. So why not to have a backend, unified standard backend platform of all PSUs that should be integrated with the organization's business operations, so that we can optimize the cloud, we can optimize the software, we can optimize the cost of operations. Because smaller PSU or government organizations, they may not be having sufficient fund or IT resources to go for such type of ERP, very costly ERP. So this is way ahead. Government should look into it. The other aspect is that, as most of my panelists, they are transformer. They are not translating any software into processes. They are transformer. They have transformed the complete businesses. They have re-engineered their work. So the way forward is, whenever you are going for any transformation project, do the government process re-engineering. There is a lot of redundancy in government. So remove that redundancy, go for government process re-engineering. Cloud first, go for cloud. Mobile app first, don't go for now desktop based application. Go move for the cloud application, move for the mobile application. Fast track decision making. Most of the PSU doesn't have IT manpower, IT persons in the board. None of PSUs have. They are up to the level of ED or CGMs. So I request the government and the fraternity to impress upon the government that now IT is very, very important. It is playing very, very important role. So some senior person should be there part of board. So that, they can take decision, they can take the pain point of the IT team of the organization. Because now the decision making is very, very, see, I have to depend on my finance officer to, concur or vet my proposal. I have to spend man hours explaining him, convincing him. Very difficult, very difficult. So one, board level position is required to, spearhead and to fast track IT implementation in the government. So these are some of my suggestions: standardization of backend operation across government, board level positions, and transformations, not translation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. A.M. Rao. Thank you so much for those inputs.
Can I reply a few things? It is very good.
Yeah.
So one thing which you said, there has to be a centralized thing, or there has to be backend. So already government is working. You must have heard API Setu, where most of the public sector are sharing their data through APIs on a single platform, which can be used by anybody. We can discuss more on that. But you said a very, very good point that at the board level now, is a time that IT is driven IT people should be there, because and that's of course affecting the ROI. As of now, the IT initiatives are bringing is much more, much very high. For example, say the data lake has totally transformed. Small few crores data lake is saving thousands of crore for NHAI. Similarly, all other oil sector and everywhere. So this has to be now brought to. Yeah, you're very right point you had raised.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Akhilesh for joining Mr. A.M. Rao. I would now go to Mr. Gautam Kumar, Chief Technology Officer in IntelliSmart Infrastructure. Sir, your closing comments, please.
So, as I mentioned about, and all our panelists have discussed on the importance of cloud and the judicious use of a private and in-premise and then the public cloud. Right? So that's what we see, that the way power sector, when I talk on mostly on the power sector requirement, and when we look into the requirement of the compute and the storage, which is from the huge data which is coming in, and the requirement of the analytics and the AI, the new things which are coming in terms of predicting, basically. The power projections need to come out very accurately, and where we are looking into more, you can say, artificial intelligence to bring into the systems. And the clouds have certainly are the only way out when we can focus on our basic business, on the logics and other part, and mostly providing the infrastructure and typically some of the platforms on the IaaS and PaaS. I think clouds have the way to go at this moment. And certainly the edge computing is certainly when we talk of IoT, edge computing is certainly a part. Right. So that's where we see that there has to be a balance and combination of various technologies, and it's evolving very fast. So we need to keep a tab and use the best. And one thing which we have to see when we are looking for the government infrastructures, the obsolescence. Right? So the risk of obsolescence and how we adopt the things so that we can have the right return of the, because everything comes from the public money out of that. So that's what we have to take care of, that the longevity of the solutions, longevity of whatever we create has to be there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Gautam Kumar. Thank you so much. I once again thank all our esteemed panelists for joining us today in this panel discussion. And it was wonderful listening to you. We will, of course, be preparing a document based on the conversation that we just had on this panel discussion. We would like, as a token of gratitude, we would like to present certificates to all our esteemed panelists. Thank you so much, Mr. Abhishek Agarwal, Chief General Manager and Head IT Energy Efficiency Services Limited, for joining us. This is a token of gratitude from us for sharing your views on this forum, virtually presented to you on behalf of Ego Magazine and ELETS Technomedia Private Limited. Thank you so much, Mr. Rahul Tandon, Head Digital Transformation, Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited, for joining us and sharing your views on this platform with other speakers. Another experts from oil and gas, Mr. Manish Malik, IT Head, Indian Oil Corporation Limited, Marketing Division. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today on this platform. Mr. Akhilesh Srivastava, Global Mobility and Highway Expert, India. Thank you so much for joining us. He's known for implementing FASTag program in our country. Thank you so much for joining. Mr. A.M. Rao, Group GM, System and Personnel, Central Warehousing Corporation. Thank you so much, Mr. A.M. Rao, for joining us. We also thank Mr. Gautam Kumar, Chief Technology Officer, IntelliSmart Infrastructure Private Limited. I hope you all also must have liked this conversation today on this platform. With this, we shall close the panel discussion here, but the program is not yet closed. We will have a presentation on migration of workloads on cloud made easy on this particular subject by Mr. Vikram Khanna. He is Cloud Solution Architect at VMC, VMware India. So this is going to be an interesting presentation, and I request all the panelists and the audience who are watching us live on Avatar platform, please stay back for the presentation by Mr. Vikram Khanna. Over to you, Mr. Vikram Khanna. May I please request you to switch on the camera?
Thank you, Harshal. Sorry, there is some issue with my web camera, so I apologize. Let me just quickly go ahead and share my screen.
Sure, sure. Over to you, Mr. Vikram Khanna.
Thank you. Thank you, Harshal. Thank you. Some of the amazing comments, made by you all gentlemen. I mean, it is such a delight to hear from such learned people like you, sir. And while I was listening to you, I being a technical guy, I'm a solution architect with VMware Cloud on AWS, basically. So being a technical guy, I started mapping, maybe our solution can position here or here or here. But then having said that, I'll try to cover briefly because unfortunately we've run out of time. So this VMware Cloud on AWS, primarily, this offering was jointly developed between VMware and AWS. We both got together, wherein we wanted to create an environment, a hybrid cloud sort of environment for our customers who are either on-prem or in the process of migrating to the cloud, or have migrated to the cloud and are facing some issues, and they want to probably come back to their most trusted platform, VMware, as a hypervisor. To give them the ability to move the workload in and out of AWS region or in and out of VMware Cloud on AWS without any hassle. So that was the whole idea behind VMware Cloud on AWS. As you can, I think Mr. Rao, you mentioned migrating to the cloud does take some time, but then it's a great cost saving. You gave an excellent example of data warehousing, sir, or data lake rather. So that is amazing, sir. And this is the whole idea, to make that whole migration and make that whole process very, very easy. That was the whole idea. So talking briefly about what is VMware Cloud on AWS, what we have done primarily is we are running our world-class hypervisor solution, which I think everybody knows here and trust us with the hypervisor solution. So we run our hypervisor solution, the same hypervisor that is available on-prem, by the way, the storage solution, for vSAN, and the SDN or NSX part on bare metal servers. Now, most of the government, some of the excellent points made by a few of the panelists here, around security. So what we have tried to do is we've tried to give you a dedicated sort of environment to run VMware Cloud on AWS, which is solely supported, operated by VMware completely, and which is very, very, flexibly available to you. Now, the whole idea, like I said, was to make cloud migrations easy and to give our customers a true hybrid cloud sort of environment. Now, one of the panelists, was talking about a true hybrid cloud. They had some running on AWS, they had some running on Azure, some running on ESDS. But the problem is, what if they want to, migrate the workload from, let's say, AWS to ESDS or AWS to Azure or vice versa, or any other cloud for that matter? That will become a little bit of challenge. Let's say because of some features, right? Some features that some hyperscaler has introduced, which they want to use. Give an example of, let's say, Mr. Rao, again, coming back to you, sir. You mentioned an excellent example of using IoT. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, you know what, we'll use Apache Kafka and, Zookeeper, and then we'll probably, define the queues. And that's how the server implementation will happen. But then, so if you want to migrate, that becomes a lot of challenge part. With VMware Cloud on AWS, we've been able to migrate the workload in and out of AWS region, or for that matter, any other cloud, that you can think of, be it Azure, be it Google, be it Oracle, be it anywhere, without any hassle. So we can do it at the mouse of, at some clicks. And while we are doing that, we can use that native functionality of AWS for example, for IoT purpose, for queuing purpose, for data warehouse, data lakes, whatever your use case is, all of your use case can be integrated with VMware Cloud on AWS. And while we integrate, your basic, your connectivity from your VMware Cloud on AWS to native AWS services will have zero costing, by the way. Zero data traverse charges. So what that basically means is, because most of the traffic today is east-west sort of traffic, you are reducing your OpEx by almost 30 to 40% with VMware Cloud on AWS. Now, some of the amazing capabilities that we see quite often is a rich VMware, SDDC, or what we call software-defined data center running on AWS. The same consistency which your tech teams are used to, on-prem. The same consistency is available on the cloud. I'm sorry, there was one panelist who made an excellent point about IT being, they want to do their business, not IT primarily. They don't want to focus on IT. So that is a clear use case for them, sir, for users like you, sir, because the same atmosphere or the same environment that your local IT teams are comfortable with today, the same environment is available on the cloud. So there's not an iota bit of difference. And again, it takes me great pride in saying that we are the only providers today who can give you a true hybrid or true workload mobility across multiple clouds with direct access to native AWS services and using certain modern applications. Now, one of the panelists made an excellent point on multi-million transactions coming in through toll gateways, right? So all that requires is basically microservices architecture, and this platform is microservices architecture ready on day one, primarily. So you literally don't have to do anything. It's just 3 mouse clicks, and you have an environment ready for your developers or your IT guys to have a complete microservice architecture. Just 3 mouse clicks, gentlemen. That's all what it takes. No command, no nothing. Now your IT will move as fast as your business, or rather you'll be able to focus on your business than IT. Now, some of the use cases that VMware Cloud on AWS solves is data center extension. Today because of COVID, you want to migrate, you want to migrate to the cloud, or you want to have a burstability on the cloud, the same workload, but burstability to the cloud. You may not be able to do that because today you might have to re-architect or re-platform certain applications. But with VMware Cloud on AWS, you do it in matter of minutes. That's all what it takes. Matter of minutes, I can migrate you, or I can burst you to the cloud as and when you want some. DR, both cold and hot DR. When I say cold, I mean basically, an RPO of, let's say, for example, 4 hours, to RPO of, let's say, 30 minutes, to RPO of, let's say, 15 minutes, to RPO of, let's say, 0 minutes. If you want that sort of capability, we have all of those capabilities today built in with our VMware Cloud on AWS. So you get all that fantastic capability. Apologies. Like I said, I can't reiterate this enough. Cloud migrations have never been that easy, which it is easy with the VMware Cloud on AWS, with support of all the next generation applications. Which brings me to an amazing point. So last year, we actually launched our portfolio called Tanzu Portfolio. With that Tanzu Portfolio, what we've been able to do is basically, we've been able to, we are basically the second largest contributor to Kubernetes after Google, who actually created Kubernetes today. So VMware has become that engrossed into the next generation applications or the modern applications today. And the same sort of features is available with any hyperscaler or any hypercloud, including the pioneered VMware Cloud on AWS primarily. Now, a lot of you gentlemen have talked about hybrid cloud as a reality, but in reality, to make hybrid cloud, there is a lot of complexities. With VMware Cloud on AWS, with our beautiful vSphere, which is our hypervisor solution, with our vSAN, which is our storage solution, or with our NSX, which is our SDN solution, we've made this as easy as just a few mouse clicks. Today, you can truly have a hybrid experience in matter of a day, for example. That's all what it takes me, honestly, to get you start rolling out the applications to the cloud. It's that easy. Just a thought about that is, when we are planning to move an application to the cloud, there are certain phases that we have to go through. Either we'll have to rehost certain platform, or we'll have to re-platform certain environment, or we'll have to probably repurchase, certain things like licenses, or for that matter, certain source code, etc. Or we'll have to refactor the application itself, thereby making a migration to the cloud bit cumbersome and a lot time taking, and this time taken could be anything from 6 months to probably 2 years, to migrate to the cloud fully. With VMware Cloud on AWS, exactly 6 mouse clicks, and you can migrate any virtual machine or any workload or any application to the cloud without any problem. That's the capability that we have tried to build in. Now, the clear advantage is, if you look at the traditional cloud model, where we were taking some time to do application analysis, and then building up duplicate architectures to migrate your applications, right? I mean, so let's say certain applications of yours are not cloud ready. So what we used to do was, we used to pick them up, recode them or something, and then keep on deploying it on the cloud while the customer was running 2 duplicate environments at the same time. Now, like I said, this process could be could take anything from 6 to probably 2 years that I've seen in my experience. And the problem with that is, with our PSOs, the biggest point is cost saving. I mean, that's the whole idea of going to the cloud. One of the major ideas is to do cost saving and to have agility. But then the problem is, during this migration phase, which could last anywhere for 2 years, you actually run 2 duplicate environments. You pay for 2 duplicate environments. You pay for on-prem environment, which you are using right now, and you also pay for the cloud. I'm sorry, sir, could you please put yourself on mute? Thank you. Sir. Thank you. So basically, this could take, this is what we used to call a migration bubble. Now, you were running duplicate environments, you were running, doing a lot of planning. Your entire IT team, I'm sure, was once, involved so deeply with CSPs, with cloud service providers, that they were missing out on their day-to-day tasks primarily, and then there was third-party tooling or leasing penalties or, consulting services that you were paying. Now, with VMware Cloud on AWS, we've actually been able to migrate, reduce this overall cost migration to a matter of days or months. So what we have been able to do is we've been able to create a distraction risk for our customers. What that basically means is today you have great infrastructure savings, your staff becomes more productive, your IT moves as fast as your business, and you get deeper innovation. Your teams now can actually focus on deeper innovations, like Mr. Rao said just a while back, using IoT for making sure that food is not gone to waste. I mean, that's a wonderful, brilliant idea. I wish I could have come up with that idea, but then, brilliant idea, sir. That is the capability. That is what we are trying to offer. Now, the magic sauce or the secret sauce behind all of this is our HCX protocol, which comes pre-bundled into the solution. So there's no additional charge for it per se. Now, with this HCX protocol, or what we call hybrid cloud extension protocol, what we've been able to do is migrate any workload from any hypervisor to the cloud itself with just few mouse clicks. It doesn't matter what that workload is. It could be a simple Windows, let's say Windows 2000 operating system, which you were running legacy, operating system, which was running a legacy, let's say Visual Basic 6 sort of application, for example, which is non-cloud native ready, right? I can bring that application to the cloud. And while doing that, the best part is I can preserve the same private IP addresses that you had on premise, which brings me to an amazing point, which brings me to an additional point, which basically what that means is today I can pick and choose any workload if I have to, and I can migrate that to the cloud in a matter of minutes, and that's it. I don't have to worry about the dependencies or the interdependencies, though we do a feasibility check and feasibility analysis for our customer, but just for fun of it. For example, let's say there is a web tier or and an app tier and a DB tier. All are talking to each other over private IP addressing schema. Now, just for the fun of it, if I want, I could pick up that database or that app tier and I can migrate to the cloud, and things will continue working as is without making any change whatsoever. Now, when I say any change, I could even preserve the local MAC address of the workload, or for that matter, I could even preserve the same host name for that workload. What that basically means is if there is an application which is MAC address dependent, or the license is MAC address dependent, or host name dependent, or IP address dependent, for example, I don't have to get into that long process of integrating third-party tooling, and thereby making the entire overall process for my customers to migrate to the cloud as easy as anything. Just to give you a small example, we have a customer who's basically using VMware Cloud on AWS, and he's a very, very large-scale bank, by the way. Today, we are migrating about 167 virtual machines in a day for him. Every day, we migrate about 167 virtual machines every day for him. That's the capability that this hybrid cloud extension has brought to the table for that customer, basically. Now, VMware Cloud on AWS is basically available practically everywhere on the planet. In India, we launched it in Mumbai region with AWS region in Q2 2019, and since then it's been a major hit. For us, it's got great success, and because of all the flexibility that is available today, we can bring up your data centers in India, adhering to the entire government compliances. We can give you dedicated environment, so that no matter what happens, your basic virtual machines or your applications never share any space whatsoever, any logical space or virtual space or physical space with any other customer. So you have absolute isolation on the environment. While we do that, so I just try to do a comparison of what is available on premise for you and what is available for you on VMware Cloud on AWS. Now, the application go live time today on-premise environment could vary anything from 4 to 8 months, depending on, you have to go through GEMS process to procure certain things, or you have to tender. Apologies. You have to do a tender for that. It could vary. But with VMware Cloud on AWS, I could reduce it in a matter of months, or rather matter of days. That's all what it takes. You tell me today if you want to bring up an SDDC for you. It takes me about 90 minutes to boot up an entire SDDC stack for you, which is ready to migrate. And after half an hour work on that SDDC, your applications are ready to migrate. We can start migration activities. The most important factor while you move to the cloud is an SLA. Now, if you look at any CSP, what they do not guarantee an SLA on your application layer. Or till your hypervisor, nobody does that. They give you a guarantee of SLA on the service availability, not on your virtual machine. As a customer, as a PSU customer, you are more bothered about how your applications will react, or what is the SLA of your actual application, because hundreds and hundreds of citizens are trying to connect to your application. How does it matter to a PSU, to an esteemed PSU like any of you, or for that matter, any government agency, if my service is up, but my application is down, right? VMware Cloud on AWS actually guarantees you a consistent 99.9 or 99.99% guaranteed uptime. No conditions applied, no asterisk marks up. We guarantee you a service availability of 99.9 or 99.99 across your virtual machines primarily. And with that, we are basically compliant with, all the ISO certifications, all the GDPR, HIPAA compliance. We have all those certifications pre-included, and the need for sudden bursting is also available on the cloud with VMware Cloud on AWS. So if you want, I can do an auto scaling sort of environment for you. If you want, it's all very, very automated. No manual intervention whatsoever required. The entire stack will be managed, supported by VMware for you. So you literally do not have to, manage your environment. So what I basically mean is, with our hypervisor solutions or our storage solution or our networking solution, VMware will patch it, will upgrade it for you till your hypervisor layer. So everything from your hypervisor layer to the physical, environment is completely managed by VMware, and we give you latest and greatest softwares with that. With that in mind, I know I'm a little out of time, but I thank you all for attending my presentation. I hope it was useful. Do you see any questions on the chat panel?
Yes, I thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Vikram Khanna, for this wonderful presentation. We have one question, a little technical one. Will VMware Cloud on AWS be running on a nested ESXi architecture?
That's an amazing question. That's an excellent question. No, we are not. We are trying to give our customers a true virtualized environment, a dedicated host sort of environment to our customers. It is not shared by any other customer primarily. That was an amazing question. Thank you for asking that question.
Okay. And thank you. This was from the audience. And what is the maximum supported cluster size in VMware Cloud on AWS?
Another amazing question. So we can start as low as probably 2 hosts in a cluster. We can increase to about 16 hosts in a cluster. Likewise, we can have up to 20 such clusters in a single SDDCs. And likewise, we can have up to 2 SDDCs per customer. Now, remember, these are all soft numbers, by the way. I can go back to my product team and I can increase it for you on demand anytime we want. So basically, it's a very, very, very scalable sort of environment that is available.
Great. Thank you so much for this. With this, we come to a formal closure of this today's roundtable. And we thank, starting from Rishu Sharma, Principal Analyst, Cloud and Artificial Intelligence from IDC for her presentation. And I, once again, from bottom of our heart, we are thankful to our panelists for the wonderful discussion. I'll once again read out their names for our audience. Mr. Abhishek Agrawal had joined us, Chief General Manager and Head IT, Energy Efficient Services Limited. Mr. Rahul Tandon, Head Digital Transformation Project Anubhav Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited. Mr. Manish Malik, IT Head Indian Oil Corporation Limited from Marketing Division. Mr. Akhilesh Srivastava, a Global Mobility and Highway Expert from India. Mr. A.M. Rao, Group GM, System and Personnel, Central Warehousing Corporation. Mr. Gautam Kumar, Chief Technology Officer from IntelliSmart Infrastructure Private Limited. Once again, thank you all, and thanks to you, Mr. Vikram Khanna, Cloud Solution Architect, VMC, VMware India, for this wonderful presentation. So
thank you.
We shall now formally close this panel discussion here, and we certainly look forward to meet all our experts and experts from VMware in our next and forthcoming conferences. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Harshan.
Thank you.
Thank you.